Today, we will revisit a shocking murder case from the 1980s in Taiwan, a tragic story about a young man from an indigenous minority. The name Chang Shen remains a highly controversial topic to this day. In July 2020, the Taiwanese drama series The Council of Bachman was released on Netflix and immediately attracted widespread attention. The show, blending legal and detective elements, delves deeply into the hardships of indigenous people and the corruption between officials and businesses. The series is based on a novel of the same name and was inspired by the brutal murder case of Ying Shen in the 1980s. In the early hours of January 25, 1986, a horrific tragedy occurred at the Xiangxiang laundromat on Shinshengbei Road in Taipei. The victims were the laundromat's owners and their 2-year-old daughter, all of whom were brutally murdered. The perpetrator was Ying Shen, an employee at the laundromat and a government-funded student at GIE Normal College, a young man from the Tao indigenous group. The Tao are one of the indigenous peoples of Taiwan. Ying Shen had been known for his skill and academic excellence from a young age. At the time of the crime, he had only been in Taipei for 9 days. After his arrest, Ying Shen was sentenced to death. However, something unexpected happened. Many media outlets, intellectuals, and human rights organizations spoke out in his defense, urging the government to grant him clemency. Even after 39 years, every time the name Ying Shen is mentioned, it still sparks debate in Taiwan. So what really happened that year? Today we will explore the story behind this case. Our journey begins in GIE County, located in the southwestern part of Taiwan, home to the majestic Alishan mountain range. At the foot of the mountain lies Wufeng, the only mountainous township in GIE County, covering 165 square miles, making up 1/5 of the entire county's area. This township, also known as the Original Village, is an autonomous administrative unit with mostly indigenous Taiwanese residents. In Wufeng, there is a small, peaceful village called Taipei, situated on the high slopes of the mountain, home to over 50 Tao families. The village is surrounded by rugged mountain ranges, and Taipei was still blanketed by the cold winds of early spring in 1986. One January day, the police chief of Wufeng, Guo Xiaohua, rushed to the home of Chang Baofu. As he entered the house, he immediately asked the couple, "Has your son, Ying Shen, returned?" The couple exchanged worried glances and replied, "He left home over 10 days ago, and we've been searching for him everywhere." Police Chief Guo Xiaohua stated, "He might be connected to a murder case in Taipei." Chang Baofu was a civil servant in the township, and his wife, Wang Zhimei, had been paralyzed after a motorcycle accident a few years earlier, which left her with a spinal injury and bedridden. The couple had 2 sons and a daughter. Their eldest son was studying at the police academy in Taipei, while Ying Shen, their second son, had taken a leave of absence from school and left a letter saying he was going to Taipei to work. Their youngest daughter was still a child. One day while chatting, the phone at Mr. Chang Baofu's house rang. The caller was his eldest son. As soon as Mr. Baofu picked up the phone, he immediately asked, "Have you seen your brother?" It turned out that since Ying Shen left home, his older brother had been relentlessly searching for him in Taipei. Over the phone, the eldest son told his father that he had not yet found his brother. "Last night, I could have gone to look for him, but I had to give up my day off to help a friend who was injured." Before the son could finish, Mr. Chang Baofu interrupted, "I heard your brother got into some trouble. Go find him, take him to the police station to clear things up. It's okay, as long as he's honest, it's probably just a misunderstanding." Mr. and Mrs. Chang still believed that their second son was well-behaved and kind, certain he couldn't have done anything wrong. However, around 2 to 3 p.m. on January 25th, the afternoon newspapers all ran a shocking headline. "This morning, at the Xiangxiang laundromat on Shinshengbei Road, Section 2, Taipei, Mr. Peng Shiheng, his wife Wang Yuqin, and their daughter Peng Shanshan were brutally murdered. The couple's 2 sons miraculously survived. The crime scene has been sealed off for investigation." At 4 p.m. on January 25, 1986, the eldest brother found Ying Shen at a relative's house in Taipei. Ying Shen called home to his mother and said, "Mom, I'm fine, don't worry." This was his first phone call home after 16 days of being gone. His mother reminded him, "You and your brother should go to the police station and explain things clearly. It's okay. Just be honest." At 6 p.m., Ying Shen and his brother took a taxi to the Zhongshan police station in Taipei. On the way there, Ying Shen stared out the window in silence. As they neared the police station, he suddenly broke down in tears and said to his brother, "Brother, let's go home. I want to see if Mom and Dad are okay." After calming down, Ying Shen finally decided to go to the police station. When asked about any criminal history or gang affiliations, he denied everything. Ying Shen stated that he had been referred to work at the Xiangxiang laundromat by Mr. Chu Shifang from a job placement center on the afternoon of January 16th and had worked there for 9 days. In just 9 short days, what could have driven a young man who had never committed a crime to become a cold-blooded murderer? In May 1986, the Taiwanese magazine Ren Jian published a 3-part series titled Behind the Tragedy, revealing the details of the case. Born on July 26, 1967, Ying Shen grew up in a devout Christian family. His uncle was a victim of the White Terror era. Ying Shen's father, Mr. Chang was highly respected in Taipei for leading efforts to raise funds to build a road connecting the township to other areas. Before the road was built, the people of Taipei lived in poverty. The fruit on the mountain would ripen, but no one would pick it because they couldn't transport it out. Once the road was built, traders began coming to buy the fruit and sign contracts. Mr. Chang continued to lead efforts to secure government funding to build a bridge for Taipei. As infrastructure improved, the living conditions of the Tao people in Taipei gradually got better. In the hearts of many villagers, Mr. Chang was seen as the person who opened the way, connecting Taipei to the outside world and reviving the tribe's economy. Born and raised in such a model family, Ying Shen was an outstanding student from a young age, obedient and very well behaved. The villagers even affectionately called him Dizi, meaning the little brother of everyone. Ying Shen attended Dabang Elementary School in his hometown. Throughout his 6 years there, he was always the class monitor and won a county-level award when he graduated. After graduating from middle school, Ying Shen passed the entrance exam to Jiayi Normal College with the aspiration of becoming a teacher and returning to serve at Dabang Elementary School. In the eyes of his friends, Ying Shen was someone who could write poetry, sing well, and was also a talented athlete. However, by his 3rd year of college, his behavior started to change, and he became a problematic student in the eyes of the school. He was often disciplined for actions like climbing walls, riding 2 people on 1 bicycle, embroidering names on uniforms, smoking, etc. However, it was later confirmed that the smoking incident was caused by his friends, and Ying Shen took the blame for them. While these issues might seem minor today, at the time, Jiayi Normal College, where Ying Shen studied, was known for its strict disciplinary rules. The school issued a warning, stating that if Ying Shen continued to misbehave, he would be expelled, which could have a significant impact on his future. After discussing with his family, Ying Shen decided to temporarily suspend his studies and return home to reflect on himself. However, the guilt and anxiety he felt made it impossible for him to stay at home in peace. He found himself restless and unable to focus. On January 9, 1986, Ying Shen left a letter and left home. In the letter, he wrote, "After much struggle and thought, I have decided to find my own path. Perhaps in the eyes of my parents, this may seem like an impulsive decision, but as an 18-year-old, even though I am not ready, I must face this reality. The pressure has become too much for me to bear, and I've lost my way. But perhaps in these years of youth, these experiences are necessary. I would rather live a reckless youth than regret it when I'm older. Please don't worry. Consider this like any other time I've gone out. I will take care of myself. Please don't look for me. I don't want to affect my future." Signed, the ungrateful son, Ying Shen. The reason Ying Shen decided to leave home was because he saw an attractive job advertisement in the newspaper. Newly opened Zhongxi restaurant is hiring 30 male and female servers. No experience required, meals and accommodation provided, salary of 15,000 new Taiwan dollars per month, generous tips, uniforms provided, no educational qualifications required, simple work environment, easy tasks. Contact us now to start working. Tianxiang restaurant. With such a high salary, Ying Shen thought he could rent a decent place in Taipei and even have the opportunity to learn English. Filled with hope, he began his journey to Taipei, unaware that the Tianxiang restaurant he intended to join had no business registration. If he had paid closer attention, he would have noticed that this so-called newly opened restaurant had been running ads in the newspaper for over a year. The person behind the advertisement was Mr. Chu Shifang, the owner of a job placement center. On January 12th, 3 days after leaving home for Taipei, Ying Shen called the phone number from the advertisement to inquire about the job. The person on the other end confirmed that the restaurant was still hiring, and he could start immediately, just needing to bring his ID card for registration. Ying Shen hesitated, as he had only about 1,000 new Taiwan dollars with him. He said, "I don't have enough money. Can I pay 500 new Taiwan dollars up front and bring the remaining 500 new Taiwan dollars in a few days?" Mr. Chu Shifang immediately agreed. Afterward, Ying Shen went to a relative's house in Sanzhong to borrow more money. On January 16th, he returned to the job center and paid the remaining 500 new Taiwan dollars. However, things didn't go as expected. When Mr. Chu Shifang received the money, he changed his story, claiming that the Tianxiang restaurant hadn't opened yet and would not be operational until after the Chinese New Year. However, he offered to introduce Ying Shen to a job at a laundromat with a decent salary, 500 new Taiwan dollars per day. But the placement fee was 3,500 new Taiwan dollars. For an 18-year-old just out of school, this amount of money was overwhelming. Seeing Ying Shen's discomfort, Mr. Chu Shifang reassured him, "Don't worry about the placement fee, you can pay me whatever you can. The rest will be covered by the employer and deducted from your salary." Ying Shen felt relieved and gave Mr. Chu Shifang the final 500 new Taiwan dollars. So even before starting his job, Ying Shen had already lost 1,500 new Taiwan dollars. Later, Mr. Chu Shifang made a phone call. Shortly after, Mr. Peng Xiheng, the owner of the Xiangxiang laundromat, arrived and paid the remaining 2,000 new Taiwan dollars of Ying Shen's placement fee. Mr. Peng also wrote a promissory note, asking Ying Shen to sign it and informing him, "Now you owe me money. I will keep your ID card as collateral." The amount listed on the promissory note was 2,200 new Taiwan dollars, which included the employer's transportation costs. That evening, January 16th, Ying Shen began his job at the laundromat. He lived and ate at the shop, where Mr. Peng used a piece of cloth and a wooden crate to create a small corner in the bedroom of his 2-year-old daughter as a sleeping area for Ying Shen. As the Chinese New Year approached, the laundromat grew busier. Ying Shen worked from 9 a.m. to 2 or 3 a.m. the next day, often working 16 to 17 hours straight. His body quickly began to wear out. Although he wanted to call his parents many times, he lacked the courage to do so. On January 24th, the 8th day of his work at the laundromat, Ying Shen gathered the courage to ask for time off and request his ID card back. He told Mr. Peng Xiheng that he wanted to go home for the Lunar New Year, as the Spring Festival in his hometown was approaching. Ying Shen calculated that after working for 8 days, at 500 new Taiwan dollars per day, he had earned a total of 4,000 new Taiwan dollars, which was enough to pay off the placement fee that Mr. Peng had advanced for him. The remaining amount would be used to pay back his relatives and for transportation to his hometown. However, Mr. Peng responded, "You've eaten my food and stayed in my place, but your pay for a day is only 200 new Taiwan dollars. You still owe me money, and now you want to leave? In your dreams!" Ying Shen was both angry and ashamed. After working tirelessly for 8 days, not only did he earn no money, but he also owed his employer. He couldn't understand this at all. When he left home, he was full of hope for Taipei, but now he only felt the unfairness of fate. At 4 p.m. on January 24th, Ying Shen went out to deliver goods to customers and collect money. He stopped by the house of his cousin, a piano musician, who lived on Jianguobei Road, Taipei. There, he drank 5 to 6 bottles of liquor. Ying Shen complained to his cousin about the job, saying he didn't want to continue and wanted to go home. His cousin comforted him, saying, "Going home sounds good. After the holiday, I'll help you find another job." In the evening, Ying Shen returned to the laundromat and continued working. By midnight, he was exhausted and fell asleep, tears of homesickness rolling down his face. At 1 a.m. on January 25th, while Ying Shen was sound asleep, Mr. Peng woke him up because a customer had urgent laundry. A wave of frustration and resentment rose within Ying Shen. He told Mr. Peng, "Boss, I don't want to work anymore. Find someone else." Mr. Peng's rude response, calling him savage, a highly derogatory term for indigenous people, pushed Ying Shen over the edge. The words were like the last straw, completely snapping the tense nerve in Ying Shen. He shouted, "Peng Shi Hung, don't think you can bully me just because I'm small." The two of them then began to fight. Mrs. Peng Wang Yu Qin, hearing the commotion, rushed over to intervene. During the struggle, Ying Shen grabbed a hammer, and the tragic incident occurred. In his frenzy, Ying Shen did not spare the 2-year-old child who was crying. After everything had ended, Ying Shen staggered away from the scene. By 3 p.m. that same day, after regaining his composure, he called the Zhongshan police station in Taipei to confess. Although the police had already received a report about the murder at the Xiangxiang laundromat that morning, for some unknown reason, Ying Shen had to wait for a long time at the agreed location, but the police never arrived. He then went to his cousin's house on Jianguobei Road, Taipei. At 4 p.m., Ying Shen's older brother came to find him and took him to the police station to confess. The night before the crime, in a desperate state, Ying Shen had tried several times to call his brother, who was studying at the police academy in Taipei, but he couldn't get through because his brother had accidentally given him the wrong phone number. Ying Shen had no idea that his family was also searching for him everywhere. In mid-January, after Ying Shen went to a relative's house in Sanzhong to borrow money, his family was notified. However, the relatives thought that Ying Shen was working at Tianxiang restaurant. Mr. Chang Baofu, Ying Shen's father, saw a job advertisement in the newspaper. On January 23rd, during a business trip to Taipei, he went to the address listed in the ad, 2nd floor, number 65, Minzu Shi Road, Taipei, across from the Pu Kwok Hotel. But when he arrived, he could not find any Tianxiang restaurant. Mr. Chang Baofu searched everywhere, and by midnight, he finally found a restaurant called Tianxiang. However, when he asked the restaurant owner about his son, the owner replied, "You're not the first person to come here looking for their child. Does this place look like a Western-style restaurant to you?" Seeing Mr. Chang's exhausted expression, the owner sympathetically suggested, "I think you should go to the police and report it." If Mr. Chang Baofu had actually reported it that day, or if Ying Shen's brother hadn't made a mistake with the phone number, could things have turned out differently? After confessing, Ying Shen was detained in jail while awaiting trial. On February 2nd, 1986, the day before the trial, Ying Shen left a brief farewell letter in his cell. He broke his glasses and tried to end his life. Fortunately, jail staff discovered him in time and rushed him to the hospital, saving his life. In the suicide note, Ying Shen wrote, "My death is not enough to atone for my sins, but I sincerely pray for the souls of the 3 victims to rest in peace. I pledge to donate my organs to anyone in need." In the top right corner of the letter, he hastily wrote several names: his parents, siblings, girlfriend, neighbors, and classmates from Jiayi Normal College. On February 11th, after being saved, Ying Shen wrote a letter to his parents from jail. He wrote, "Dear Mom and Dad, I should have written to you sooner to express my regret and gratitude toward you. But I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't bring myself to write. Life is full of changes. The son you raised for 18 years has committed a heinous crime. I carry this heavy sin, and it's too late for regrets. But I still hope that in your hearts, I am still a good son, even though that is now completely impossible. I do not seek leniency from the law because I have committed too great a wrong." The letter was signed, "The Ungrateful Son, Ying Shen." On March 20th, during the trial, Ying Shen was sentenced to death and stripped of his citizenship for life. When the case first occurred, Many newspapers reported on it with the headline, "The Massacre of the Family." However, over time, as the case became clearer, public opinion began to shift. More and more people expressed sympathy for Ying Shen. Professor Huang Leiqing of National Chengchi University gave a speech at the school saying, "This case is a tragedy of our society." Professor Yang Guoshu of National Taiwan University's Department of Psychology stated, "We must understand the meaning behind the words and actions of our friends from the mountains." Dr. Zhou Zhang of Heidelberg University in Germany suggested that society should view this case from a legal anthropological perspective. Mona Neng, an indigenous poet, shared, 13 years ago, I was deceived by a job placement center. At that time, I truly wanted to seek justice for society." Mona Neng, who is blind, choked up as he added, "The fate of young people in the mountains 13 years ago was the same, and it remains unchanged today." Famous Taiwanese artist and poet Zhang Xun wrote, "The Yingshen case is not just a criminal case. For many years, the Tao people have been labeled as the killers of Wu Feng." This ethnicity seems to be born with guilt. Given the oppression and prolonged injustices, we must look at the Ying Shen case from a cultural and social perspective. The Tao people did not kill Wu Feng. If Ying Shen is sentenced to death, then it is Wu Feng who is the murderer. So, what is the conflict between the Tao people and Wu Feng that Zhang Xun mentions? To understand, we must first look into the challenging circumstances faced by the indigenous people of Taiwan. The indigenous people of Taiwan belong to various ethnic groups, each with their own language and customs, and they have lived on the island long before the Han Chinese migration in the 17th century. Today, there are 16 indigenous groups recognized by the Taiwanese government, including the Tao. According to statistics from May 2023, the indigenous population of Taiwan is about 586,000, making up about 2.5% of the total population. In the 1960s and 1970s, Taiwanese elementary school textbooks included a lesson with a story roughly like this. During the Qing dynasty, there was a man named Wu Feng who migrated from his hometown in Fujian to Taiwan, living at the foot of Alishan Mountain in Jiayi County. He was very intelligent and energetic, helping the local people with farming and tool-making, and was loved by everyone. Later, Wu Feng was appointed as a local official. The indigenous people living at the foot of Alishan had an ancient custom of using human heads for sacrificial rites. Wu Feng wanted to abolish this barbaric practice, but the indigenous people refused to listen. Wu Feng was deeply saddened and cried, telling the villagers, "If you must kill someone for your rituals, tomorrow morning, a person in a red robe with a red hat, riding a white horse will appear. You should kill that person." The next morning, a person in a red robe indeed appeared. More than 10 indigenous people hunted and killed the person in the red robe. However, when they removed the hat, they discovered that it was none other than Wu Feng, the person they respected the most. The indigenous people were deeply remorseful, and from that point on, they abandoned the practice. In reality, history records the existence of a man named Wu Feng. He was a minor official during the Qing dynasty, of Han Chinese descent, but his biography remains unclear. The story of Wu Feng sacrificing himself to end the Tao people's headhunting ritual first appeared in Liu Jiamai's Hai Yin Shi, written during the early years of the Qianlong era. Later, the image of Wu Feng sacrificing himself for a noble cause was glorified in works such as Yu Yinlin Cai Wen Shu and Taiwan Tongchu. The legend of Wu Feng actually reflects the conflict of interests and culture between the Han Chinese and the indigenous people. However, is this story truly accurate? The authors of this story were all Han Chinese, and naturally, the story comes from the Han Chinese perspective. Many indigenous people have raised questions about the details of the story. For example, red in Tao culture symbolizes heroism, so the Tao people could not possibly have killed someone wearing a red robe. Additionally, there were no white horses in Alishan. The indigenous people of Alishan only grew millet, not rice, and they had no need for rice. Some indigenous people have even passed down stories that Wu Feng was actually a profiteer who regularly exploited the indigenous people, using their deer hides and meat to trade for goods with the Han Chinese, making illicit profits. He even allegedly seized land and women from the indigenous people. During Japan's occupation of Taiwan from 1895 to 1945, the Japanese interacted with the Tao people to extract timber from Alishan. For political purposes and to create an image of generosity and kindness, the Japanese began actively promoting the story of Wu Feng. They built a temple to Wu Feng, adapted the story into plays, dances, songs, films, and even included it in elementary school textbooks in Japan, Taiwan, and Korea. The image of Wu Feng sacrificing himself to civilize the indigenous people became deeply ingrained in the minds of many generations. Meanwhile, the Tao people were stereotyped as savages, backward, and headhunters, and they were widely discriminated against. When the nationalist government, Kuomintang, arrived in Taiwan, they continued the Japanese policy regarding Wu Feng. They renamed the township of Alishan to Wu Feng Township, named streets after Wu Feng, built a Wu Feng high school, and erected a statue of Wu Feng in front of the Jiayi train station. There is an old saying, "To destroy a people, first destroy their culture." And the easiest way to destroy a culture is to implant or distort its history. In reality, since the mass migration of Han Chinese to Taiwan centuries ago, the indigenous people have had to live in difficult conditions. In an interview with Renjian magazine, Father Gao Yihui of the Teifu Christian Church recalled his years of high school in Taichung, where he was frequently treated like an animal simply because he was indigenous. Every time someone called him savage, he just wanted to fight to release his anger. If something went missing in the dormitory, teachers would immediately accuse indigenous students of being the thieves without any investigation. And if there was a bad smell anywhere, they would blame the indigenous students for not bathing properly. Father Gao shared that, in a culture filled with disadvantages, indigenous people, even when living in the city, always lived a transient, unstable life. They are easily provoked, tense, and often feel anxious. 1 year before the incident, when Ying Shen was still studying at Jiayi Normal College, he went to see Father Gao and admitted, "I have become a sick person." Father Gao Yihui clearly remembers that during a Catholic summer camp held in Teifu, Ying Shen was chosen as the leader as soon as he arrived. During the day, he was diligent and respectful, but at night, he couldn't control himself, sneaking out with a group of friends to drink alcohol behind the camp, and was caught in the act. According to Father Gao, Ying Shen, as an indigenous person coming to the city, always tried to hide his feelings of inferiority and pressure, but this led him to react against the pressure, making him increasingly sensitive. For an indigenous person far from home, the pressure they endure cannot simply be explained by the saying, "If you can't adapt, don't come." On June 26, 1986, the appellate court upheld the death sentence for Ying Shen. On May 11, 1987, the Supreme Court confirmed the death sentence. The law stipulates that confession is the only condition that could lead to a reduction of the death sentence. Ying Shen's lawyer appealed, presenting 2 reasons for a reduced sentence. First, that Ying Shen had voluntarily turned himself in. Second, that Ying Shen had been drinking when the crime occurred, and therefore his mental state at the time of the crime needed to be assessed to determine the appropriate level of punishment. However, the court dismissed the lawyer's appeal, explaining that since the police had already received a report of the crime before Ying Shen turned himself in, it did not qualify as a confession. Furthermore, after committing the crime, Ying Shen had cleaned up the crime scene, taken the victim's ID and promissory note, and even taken some money from the victim's wallet. The court concluded that Ying Shen's mental state was unaffected. In court, Mr. Chang Baofu said to the judge, "If only my son could be given a chance to correct his mistake." However, he was interrupted before he could finish. He bowed his head, stood still in silence, and tears flowed uncontrollably. After Ying Shen was sentenced, many media outlets, academic circles, and over 120 prominent figures signed a letter to Jiang Jingguo requesting a pardon for Ying Shen. At the time, Jiang Jingguo was the president of Taiwan. On May 12, 1987, the Zili Wanbao newspaper ran a full-page advertisement with the title, "Please Spare His Life." Composer Shen also released an album about the murder case, with some lyrics using Ying Shen's own words and others based on Tao folk songs. However, during an era of strict censorship, very few people were able to hear this album. At 5:40 a.m. on May 15, 1987, Ying Shen, not yet 20 years old, was executed by firing squad, paying the price for his crimes and becoming Taiwan's youngest death row inmate. Before the execution, he firmly refused anesthesia, unwilling to lessen his pain, and said, "I deserve this punishment. I must endure this pain." On May 16th, in his journal, Chief of Staff He Bai-kun wrote, "It was the people outside the party and some religious individuals who petitioned Jiang Jingguo to delay the execution, which angered Jiang Jingguo. He was displeased and said, 'This case must be handled according to the law.' As a result, Ying Shen was executed the following day." The attempt to save Ying Shen became a social movement with significant meaning. People not only wanted to save an innocent life, but also wanted society to reevaluate the criminal justice system and fight against the injustices within the social structure. This is why the petition letter from intellectuals caused the government to feel uneasy. In June 1987, Renjian magazine, issue 27, continued its coverage of the Ying Shen case, with a cover photo of Ying Shen's younger sister holding his urn, accompanied by the headline, "Ying Shen has returned home." The day before the incident occurred, Ying Shen wrote in his journal, "Looking at the dust swirling in the air from passing cars, I suddenly felt so lonely. I once said I would succeed. I once said I would endure, but my nerves are almost shattered. I can't bear it anymore. I can only scream. It's so unfair." At this point, many might think the case was simply a desperate act of rebellion by Ying Shen after being exploited by his laundromat employer. However, the final article in the Renjian series titled "Behind the Tragedy," written from the perspective of the victim's family, uncovered many additional details about the case. It turns out that the intense work at the laundromat was not due to the inherent cruelty of Mr. Peng and his wife. In the face of economic hardship, they also had their own struggles. Mr. Peng Shi-heng, the owner of Shangxiang Laundromat, was the third child in a family of 4 brothers. In the 1950s, his father, Peng A-sheng, moved the entire family from Hsinchu to Taipei to start a business, beginning with a laundromat. He later expanded into knitting production and eventually founded a knitting export company called Zhao Yun. During its heyday, Zhao Yun employed over 50 staff members, and Peng Shi-heng and his second brother, Peng Shi-juan, were the pillars of the family business. The company's primary export market was Singapore. However, in 1985, an economic crisis in Singapore caused a sharp decline in orders, severely impacting the business. Mr. Peng A-sheng wanted to continue for a while longer, hoping that the economic situation might improve by spring 1986. If not, he would consider shifting the business direction. However, Peng Shi-heng thought differently. He believed that Singapore's economy would not recover quickly, and extending the business was simply a waste of time. Therefore, he decided to start his own business. Not long after, Peng Shi-heng found a laundromat for sale on Xinsheng Bay Road, Section 2, Taipei. He decided to restart with the familiar laundromat business, spending his entire savings of 360,000 new Taiwan dollars to purchase it. In October 1985, he hung a new sign for the store: Shangxiang Dry Cleaners. Mr. Peng Shi-heng and his wife Wang Yu-chin had 3 children. Their eldest son, A Yun, their second son, A Heng, and their youngest daughter, Shan. After moving to the laundromat, the family's life became very busy. Every morning at 7:10 a.m., Mr. and Mrs. Peng would drop their 2 sons off at school and then begin their work at the laundromat. Mrs. Wang Yu-chin would sort the clothes to be delivered to customers and write the addresses on each item to avoid mix-ups. Mr. Peng Shi-heng would organize the clothes by address. At 9 a.m., the laundromat would open. Mr. Peng would go out for deliveries while Mrs. Wang stayed behind to manage the store. At the laundromat, Mrs. Wang Yu-chin was never idle. She had to take care of their 2-year-old daughter while continuously assisting customers. Urgent orders were a common occurrence. From a young age, Mr. Peng Si-hung had a passion for machinery and antique equipment. After purchasing the laundromat, he made special changes to the counter, the signage, and the layout of the store. He even borrowed a 12-inch crowbar from a friend to remove nails from the wood. Over time, this crowbar became an everyday tool at the shop, sometimes placed on the shelves, other times left beside the washing machines. With his years of business experience, Mr. Peng Si-hung quickly helped the Xiangxiang laundromat stabilize and grow. After just 3 months of opening, the customer base continued to increase. However, the relentless work took a toll on the health of both Mr. and Mrs. Peng. They decided to ask Mr. Chu Shifang, the owner of the job placement center, to find a worker for them. That's when Ying Shen came to work at the laundromat. According to Mr. Peng Shi-juan, the second brother of Mr. Peng Si-hung, keeping the ID cards of new employees was not an unusual practice. Many employers did the same when paying upfront placement fees. Mr. Peng Shi-juan said, "In the past, when working in knitting business, workers introduced by the job placement center never caused any trouble. As long as they paid off their debts, no one could keep their ID cards." He believed that Ying Shen couldn't adapt to the work at the laundromat. At the time of the incident, Mr. Peng Si-hung's 2 sons were sleeping in another room. Although they heard noises, they didn't go outside to check. Fortunately, luck smiled on them, sparing them from disaster. Mr. Peng Si-hung's father, Mr. Peng A-sheng, believed that Ying Shen had shown ingratitude. He testified in court that his family had lost 120,000 new Taiwan dollars in cash, a Rolex watch, approximately 8,000 new Taiwan dollars worth of gold, a postal savings book, and Mrs. Wang Yu-chin's seal. However, the court did not accept Mr. Peng A-sheng's testimony about the theft. The court ruled that Ying Shen only took the promissory note between him and Mr. Peng Si-hung, along with 2,400 new Taiwan dollars. After the incident, Mr. Peng Si-hung's 2 sons lived with their uncle, Peng Si-chuan, and their paternal grandparents. Losing their parents and younger sister, the 2 brothers seemed to mature quickly, studying harder and becoming more thoughtful. The principal of their school even waived all their tuition and textbook fees. Today, Mr. Peng Si-hung's 2 sons have grown up. It's hard to find any information about them online. No matter how they live now, the cold spring of 1986 will likely always be a painful memory they do not want to revisit. The Ying Shen case destroyed 2 families and took the lives of 4 people. So, who is to blame for this tragedy? This is a very difficult question to answer. Famous writer Zhang Hengji commented, "This is a systemic, complex, and subjective crime." When Mr. Chang Baofu learned that his son was about to be executed, he rushed to bring his wife and children to the Taipei prison to meet Ying Shen for the last time. While everyone else was busy writing letters to Jiang Jingguo, Mr. Chang Baofu tiredly went back and forth between the hospital to fulfill his son's organ donation wish. At that time, someone suggested organizing a protest outside the legislative yuan, but Mr. Chang Baofu declined. He said, "We love Ying Shen, but we also cannot ignore the pain of the victim's family." After Ying Shen was executed, Mr. Chang Baofu took back the small cross that his son had been holding tightly in his hands. Perhaps due to the immense pain during the execution, the image of Jesus on the cross had been distorted. Looking at the small cross in his hands, he choked up and said, "Jesus was the only one who was close to him in his final moments." 2 months after Ying Shen's death, Jiang Jingguo ordered the lifting of martial law in Taiwan. From July 15th, the nearly 45-year period of martial law and the era of white terror officially came to an end. The suppressed social forces, long repressed, began to rise up. In 1988, the Give Us Our Land Back movement was initiated by advocates for indigenous rights. The same year, a group of indigenous youth destroyed the bronze statue of Wu Feng in front of the Jiayi train station, symbolizing the fall of the Wu Feng myth. In 1989, Wu Feng Township was renamed Alishan Township. Mr. Chang Baofu, who was beloved by the villagers, was elected as the head of Alishan and was re-elected for 2 more terms. In the 1990s, the government began to abolish discriminatory terms like mountain people or ethnic minorities and instead adopted the official term indigenous people. In 2005, Taiwan passed a basic law for indigenous people, recognizing their legal rights to self-governance. This might be a controversial statement, but it was Ying Shen's death, not his survival, that awakened society and forced people to reconsider ethnic rifts. It was Mr. Chang Baofu and Ying Shen, with the dignity of the Tao people and the sense of responsibility in facing guilt and punishment through their Christian faith, who touched people's hearts and sparked deeper reflection on the Ying Shen case. Today, the rights of indigenous people have been gradually improved. However, Ying Shen and the 3 victims are no longer here to witness that change. This concludes today's video. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.